Welcome, Jill Z.
Let me get my clock out here so I don't talk too long. Oh, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I remember you used to kind of just hang around the alcoholics, like on the fringes, hanging around with the alcoholics, but never like in. And then one day I walked into a meeting and Patrick was here. You know, sometimes that's just the way Alcoholics Anonymous is that we kind of know it's there and we'd rather stand on the outside and look in for a little while before we actually come in. Because we see what you people look like and it's kind of scary. I'm Jill, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is December 7th, 1998. And, you know, I usually, when I tell my story, I kind of just, you know, talk to God before I get here, and I just kind of say, okay, let's see how it goes. I did make some notes because I am getting older. In case I kind of end up in a rabbit hole, I'd have something to kind of bring me back. I always like to start with a reading from the big book. So I've decided I'm going to read the first 7 chapters. Actually, I'm just going to read a little bit from chapter 7, Working with Others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Isn't that the truth? Life will take on a new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss this. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And that has proven true to me over and over in the years that I've been around. Before I get started, I do want to say that I am very grateful. I'm grateful for the sponsorship that I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've had quite a few. I'm grateful for the people that I've sponsored in Alcoholics Anonymous because you guys keep it real for me. And actually a couple of them are in the room that I haven't seen in a while, so that's kind of cool. That I don't sponsor anymore, but I have worked with. I'm grateful for the friendships that I've made and the people that are on this amazing journey with me, because you guys are the ones that help me when I don't know what else to do. And so I'm just really grateful that each and every one of you are here. You know, I've made a lot of new friends since I've been in the program, and people that I would have never imagined. You know, the book talks about we are people who normally would not mix. And that's probably a good thing while we're still drinking, because if we were all together at that time, that would not be a good thing. Just one thing that I do like to reference before I get started is that my story does have some drug use in it. If that's a problem, I hope you have a sponsor, because you're probably going to need to call them afterwards. And I usually like to start at the end, and then I jump to the beginning. So here's how that goes. In late November of 98, I was getting to the point where I was getting ready to begin my journey into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had been going to meetings for a while, and I'd finally started actually calling my sponsor and working the steps. And my girlfriend, she lived down in Stephenville at the time, and she was going to Tarleton State University, and she was getting ready to go into the Air Force. And she had come into Dallas. She was getting ready to ship out or fly out or whatever the Air Force does. Anyway, she had come into Dallas one night, and we went out to dinner, and she decided she wanted to go out to the bar. And I was like, no, I'm a good girl. I'm not drinking. I'm not going to go to the bar. And so I let her go to the bar. And long story short, she had a really good time. And I had multiple conversations with her in my head before she got home, which led up to a really nice resentment. And the next day, I threw my 7 days of sobriety out the window and I got drunk. And I called everybody that would still loan me money and borrowed money from them. And I had my last relapse on December 6th of 1998. And I'd gone to watch football. Obviously, it was a Sunday, and it was in the wintertime, so football was on. And I'd gone to watch football, and I started drinking. And after borrowing all this money from people, I decided I was going to go do what I wanted to do, and that was to go get some cocaine to supplement my drinking. And so I did that, and I was actually, during that time, I was renting a room from a coworker. I mean, the only thing I had to my name at that time was I hadn't really lost anything. I just never had anything. I was sleeping on the bedroom suit that my sister and I shared as little girls. It was a bed, 2 side tables, a chest of drawer, and a dresser. And it was made out of this like flimsy little particle board stuff. That was the only thing I owned in my vehicle. And I was renting a room from a coworker for $50 a week. And that was a lot of money for me to be putting out. That was $50 more a week I could have been using other ways. But I remember sitting there that night, and as I started using, as pretty much every time that I did use, at some point it would get to the point where I would start running out. Well, at this night I got to the point where it was like I was just about out, and I remember sitting there feeling like my heart was just about to explode. I mean, it literally, and I had never been so afraid in my entire life. And I remember thinking of all those times that I would pray to God, why don't you just kill me? Why don't you just kill me? I don't want to be here anymore. And I was too chicken to try to kill myself, because I figured I'd just screw that up too, you know. And so I remember being in that place where I was so afraid of living and so afraid of dying that, you know, there's not a whole lot of room in between that, you know. There's not a whole lot of ways to go. And so I laid down. I knew I had to work tomorrow or the next day, and I finally laid down and finally fell asleep. And the first thing I did that morning was I called my sponsor. And you know, she was disappointed, and you know, I told her what happened. She was disappointed, but she said, "Meet me at a meeting tonight. Don't drink, don't use, meet me at a meeting." And so I met her at a meeting. And again, I explained to her, as alcoholics do, we have to explain things several times before you really get it. I mean, that's just how we do. And so I explained to her again what happened, because, you know, I had to make sure my excuses were valid. And she leaned over and hugged me, and she said, "You know what, Jill?" She said, "Everything's going to be okay." And that was the first time in my life that I ever felt like things were going to be okay. I really felt like for that moment that things were going to be okay. And then I started working the steps. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Actually, let's see, I was 32 when I got sober. So I'm going to back up about 32 years. And I was born, my mother and father, my dad was 17 years older than my mother. And I was born in Louisiana. That explains a lot. My mother and father, there was always they always had a tumultuous relationship. I mean, there was always, you know, because my mom, she was young and vibrant. She was 24 when I was born, and my dad was 41. And so there was, I mean, you know, she was still young and vibrant and, you know, wanted to enjoy everything. And my dad was a little bit, you know, stricter. And so there was a lot of violence is kind of a really rough word, but without any better word to say, that's what it was. It was violence. My parents fought a lot, and my dad was a good bit bigger than my mother. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm getting nervous talking about this. It never bothered me before. I just drank over it. So, and this is not the first time I've talked about it from the podium either, but But yeah, I mean, I remembered several times when my mother and father, and they always seemed to be fighting about me. I was my dad's only child. My mother had 2 previous children from her first marriage. But it just seemed like I was always the topic of the conversation of why they were fighting. As a result, my dad ended up kidnapping me twice, and I was basically raised by my dad until he was able to get custody of me. I guess I was probably about 10 years old when he got custody of me. But yeah, I mean, I would see things that, my dad beating on my mom and my mom kicking him, and it was really pretty bad. And then so when I'd get upset, what my mom would do to calm me down is she'd give me alcohol. Backing up a little bit further, I mean, I was practically raised in a bar when we were living in Louisiana. My parents would take us kids to the bar, and I remember putting 2 chairs together and going to sleep in a bar. And, being from Louisiana, when you're tall enough to put your money on the bar, you're old enough to drink. And everybody in the town knew that my dad let me drink, so it was really easy throughout high school and all that to get alcohol. I got my first, let me back up a little bit. I'm getting off track again, which is why I have notes. Anyway, so over and over, my parents fought, and it was never over my brother and sister. And so I didn't realize until I went through the steps the first time that I had a bit of a resentment against my brother and sister because of that. Thankfully, I had a good sponsor, and we worked through that. And I actually have a fairly close relationship with my sister now. But my brother, he doesn't really talk to either my sister and I. But that's his deal. Anyway, so my dad got custody. I guess I was probably about 10 years old, and before he got custody of me, I mean, we moved around a lot. Like, we started out, we would be when he kidnapped me the first time, we were in Louisiana, and we moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And so, hop up, pack up everything, and we left my mother with 2 kids in a very rural area of Louisiana with no car. We took the station wagon with the one that had the wood paneling trim on it, Ford LTD. We took that and we towed my dad's pickup truck behind the car. So we left my mother with basically no job, no car, 2 kids in the middle of Podunk, Louisiana. So I learned some really good behavior from my dad. I learned a lot of really valid things from him. I learned about geographic cures. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. I learned a lot of really helpful relationship tips. I don't suggest that you follow any of them. They don't work out very well. So anyway, we moved to Louisiana, and I was probably, the last time we moved to Louisiana, I was probably 12 or 13, and started hanging out with older kids and doing things that older kids did. So I was, smoking and drinking and smoking pot and other things that were on my 4-step that I won't mention from the podium, but that's what we did. We didn't have anything to do in this little small town, and so that we drank and we used, and we ran the roads. And as a result of that, I got my first DWI when I was 17. I got my second DWI when I was 18. I got my third one. I had just turned 21, I think. And in the state of Louisiana, that's a felony. And I spent some time in jail for that one. I won't get into the whole story about that because it would probably end up sounding more like I'm glorifying it, but there were a lot of funny stories around that one. Thank God I didn't go to prison. I was able to serve my time in a parish jail, which is probably a good thing because at that time I weighed a little bit less than I do now, and I probably would have ended up being somebody's bitch. And that would not have been a good thing. So I did eventually, from that one, I paroled out, and like the good alcoholic that I was, I decided it was time for another cure. And so I had a friend that lived in Marietta, Georgia, so I packed up and moved to Georgia. And I was there. I think that was the only place that I lived that I didn't get a DWI. I didn't have a car. Go figure. So I was there until the relationship that I got in there ended. Oops, is that another pattern? Might be. So I got into a relationship with a woman there, and that didn't go so well. And so when it ended quite abruptly, we'll say abruptly, yes. I moved to Maryland. So here's another geographic on the road again. So I moved to Maryland. My mother lived there. And so I had visited my mother, and I knew a few people there, and so it was no big deal. So I moved to Maryland, get a job. I don't know, a couple of weeks in, I'm in another relationship. And moved in with her, and we were together for about 4 years before, and that was probably about 2 years longer than I would have put up with my shit. But she put up with me for 4 years before that relationship ended, and I packed up and I moved again. And this time my dad was still alive, and so my mom had, in the meantime, moved to Plano, Texas. And so I moved down here so that I'd be closer to my dad, because he was not well, and I needed to be closer to him in case he needed me, you know. And so that's what I did, and I moved to Dallas in December of 1993. And so I moved here. I got into another relationship pretty quickly, moved in with her, and that relationship lasted maybe a year and a half. And then during that time, she had introduced me to the joys of cocaine use. And what I found out in that relationship, I found out something very important. I found out that I liked cocaine better than I liked her. And so I did the next best thing. I moved in with my drug dealer. And that was convenient. So I moved in there, and in the meantime, through all this stuff, I'm just like, everything gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse as it goes along. And I'm in all these really, I laugh about it now, but as I'm telling, these are really pretty crazy situations that I got myself in. And at the time, I weighed probably about 105 pounds, soaking wet. I think when I got sober, I weighed 106 pounds, and I was not any shorter than I am right now, so it was pretty skinny. So I moved in there for a while, and that just didn't work out very well. So, long story short, from that, I moved in. I had gone to work for a local nursery and become friends with one of the women that worked there, and she's the woman who's the room I was renting. And during this time, I had started dating this woman that lived in Stephenville. And during my relationship with this woman, at one point, she called my mother, who still lived in Plano, and told my mother all the extracurricular activity that I had been doing. That was her attempt to try to save me. And so that was around the beginning of 1998. I actually got sober twice in 1998. The first time was for about 4 months. I had been going to meetings, and I quit using cocaine for 4 months, and then the last 6 weeks or so of that, I was finally able to quit drinking, because I'd been maintaining with beer, all that time before, and I was going to meetings and working with my sponsor as much as you can when you're maintaining with alcohol. But the last 6 weeks or so, I was completely clean of alcohol and drugs, and then I stopped going to meetings, And after I stopped going to meetings, because they were working so well, I thought, surely I can do this on my own. So after going to meetings for about a month and maintaining some sobriety, I stopped going to meetings. And 2 weeks later, I was in a liquor store buying beer. And 2 weeks after that, I was being arrested for DWI and possession of cocaine. I forgot to tell about the one in Maryland, but I did get one in Maryland while I was up there too. So like I said, Georgia's the only place I lived that I didn't get a DWI. When I in the beginning of '98, when I was going to meetings, I was also going to NA meetings. And the funny thing is that when they arrested me, I still had my little white interview that had been to NA. I still have my white little key tag on my keychain. So I got arrested for DWI. That was number 5. Because Louisiana doesn't keep very good records, they never found out about the previous 3. So, and then I guess, I don't know how they do it, but Maryland was so far away that I guess that one never came up either. So it turned out to be that when I got arrested in Dallas, it was a first offense DWI. I know, the luck of the Irish. Which I am Irish and German, so I was doomed to be an alcoholic anyway, so. But how that happened, I don't know. I mean, I look back now and I can see all through, even in my drinking, I can look back now and see all the different grace that I had bestowed upon me through all the wrecks I got into, all the times I got stopped by the police that they didn't give me a DWI that they should have. You know, there's just been so many different gifts that even during my drinking that I couldn't recognize it then, but I can recognize it now. And the one thing that I can look back and realize too, that every time I drank or used drugs, it was to fulfill something inside of me that I didn't have without it. You know, I couldn't have a conversation with people unless I'd had a couple of drinks, because I was awkward and uncomfortable and I didn't feel like I fit in. And, you know, I came from this family that my parents, you know, they disliked me so much that they fought about me all the time. And then I have this perfect brother and sister, the jock, and my brother, you know, he's a football player, and my sister's on the honor roll. And then there's me, you know, and even my mother, jokingly, of course she was probably serious too, knowing my mother, when she described, when people would ask her if she had kids, she'd say, yeah, I have 3, and she'd say, what do you have? And she'd say, 1 of each. And I don't, see? I mean, you know, so I was always the odd one out, you know, the whole time I was in this family. And, or that's how it felt. You know, I know now that I was just me, and that they all loved me, and they, you know, my family still loves me, and that was just, but I made everything about me back then, you know. And so I get this DWI in July of 1998, and I didn't stop drinking then. I kept drinking, and I kept using. And the thing about when you smoke cocaine, which is what I had gotten to because I completely destroyed my sinus passages, it makes you sweat a lot. And so I would be up all night smoking and drinking, and then I'd have to go to court the next day, and I'd go to court with a ball cap on. And I had convinced my dad to hire an attorney for me. I had a whole list of enablers too. I didn't get into that, but that's a whole nother story. But I would go to court with this ball cap on, and my attorney would say, take the cap off. And so y'all know what that looks like when you've been out in the yard working and behind a lawnmower and you've been sweating all day and what your hair looks like. And it was like I just had no concept of, at that point, what I was. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I knew I was an alcoholic and an addict. That was pretty clear, but I just had no self-value, no self-worth. And it was like I literally was living to use and using to live. I mean, the line was not at all blurred. It was like, that's what I was here for. I was here to do that. And I was certain that I was going to die that way. Speeding up the process a little bit, I got deferred adjudication on the cocaine charge and a first offense DWI. And when I went in for this intake, my probation officer, I had turned in one dirty UA before I got sober. And she told me I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You got 1 foot in jail and 1 foot out, and I'm going to let you make the decision how you want this to go. And it was within, a day or two of that I had my last relapse. I came into the rooms, I spoke to my sponsor and told her what happened. And she told me everything was going to be okay. And you know what? She was right. Everything has been okay. Sometimes it's been pretty fucking awesome. Sometimes it's been a little shitty. But it's been okay. I came into the rooms and I was told that if I would put just a fraction of the effort into my program that I put into my drinking and using, that I'd be able to make it. And that's probably true. But I was too scared not to put in more than a fraction. So when I went to a straight meeting, the Omega group, and my first sponsor was straight, because I knew that I wouldn't try any funny shit with her, We're still really good friends. But I would go to the straight meeting, and all these straight women would just gather around me, and they'd be like, okay, we're going to go have coffee. And they'd swarm me into a car. And then we'd go to Denny's or IHOP or somewhere, and I didn't have any money. I was giving all my money to the state of Texas at that point, and they're like, we don't care, you're going anyway. So, these women rallied around me, and they loved me until I could learn to love myself. And I would hear people say that in meetings, just let us love you till you can love yourself. And I would think, what is this shit? I'm not ever going to love myself. Do you not know what I have done? And so I got around to doing my first, fourth, and fifth step. And man, there was some stuff on that first one that was really hard to look at. I mean, I did some stuff that I was for sure not ever going to let out of the darkness. And I finished it, and I'm just sitting there just waiting for her to just jump up and run out of the room screaming, "Get away from me, you freak!" She didn't do that. She looked at me, she's like, "Is that all?" "What do you mean, is that all? I've just told you all this stuff, and is that all?" And so, what I know is that what I think is so horrible, there are people that have done things that they feel are equally as horrible. She told me some of the stories of some of the things that she did, and I was like, oh wow, she does know what I'm talking about. So we finished going through the steps, and the reading that I read about, having a fellowship grow up about you and having a host of friends, that's something I never knew when I was out there. I had a lot of people that, I don't know if you'd call them friends or what, but there were people that I spent time with, and I have no idea where most of them are now. I've got a handful of people that I knew like way back in the 80s that I'm still friends with, but all the people that I knew from the time I got to Dallas until now, in '93, have no idea where those people are. And we were all such good friends, you know. They were there for me when I had a little pouch of cocaine. I couldn't tell you if they're even alive now. One of the things that I realized in going through the steps too is that most of us are more alike than we are different, especially in Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the things that I had a hard time doing was I didn't want to note the similarities. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be unique. I mean, you guys if you had the kind of life I had, you would drink. Well, y'all did. Y'all did drink. Y'all did do drugs. Y'all did have the kind of life that I had, but it was your version of it. And it's like I couldn't understand the concept of that. How we all had these perceptively, and most of it, some of us, I'm not minimizing anybody's story, don't think that I am, but a lot of the stuff that I perceived that happened to me was in my head. Something would happen, and I would create a story up here about it. And that's what I told everybody, was the story. And what I know is that once I can rewrite the story and tell the truth, then I can heal from all that. My parents did the best that they could. They didn't have anything, they didn't have the tools either. I used to think that there were people that came into this world and they knew how to do stuff. And I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I think that we all come with a certain set of skills, and as alcoholics, somehow or another, our wires don't match up or something, and we take everyday situations and or I should speak for myself, everyday situations and blow them out of proportion. Hold on. I lost it there for a minute. Well, I'll kind of start wrapping it up a little bit. A couple of things that I learned was that from my alcoholism is I learned really bad relationship skills. I learned really bad geographic cures. For a long time, the alcohol and drugs, they made things in my life really bearable because, like I said, I was awkward and uncomfortable and didn't fit in anywhere. And then they turned on me. I learned to lie and place blame on other people. And then what Alcoholics Anonymous taught me was that I can have healthy relationships if I begin with having a healthy relationship with myself first. And, that's, for me, that's been kind of a lifelong thing, Maybe that's why I've been single almost 9 years now. Actually, a little over 9 years, for the most part. Is that I'm learning to have a relationship with me now. I've learned that I like to travel. I like to travel by myself because I get to do what the hell I want to do. And I have a lot of fun doing it. Also, what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is that every time something happens, I don't have to pack and move. I can just stay right here and walk through it. I can call my sponsor. I can call a friend in the program. I can go to a meeting. If I need a therapist, I can get a therapist. If I need to go out to the batting cages and knock the shit out of baseballs all day, I can do that. Whatever, but I don't have to run from anything anymore. And I was a runner. I did learn that from my dad, and it was a hard it was a hard to change habit that was pretty deeply ingrained into me. I haven't moved in, let's see, I haven't moved since 2006. So that's pretty good for me, you know. I also learned that, that alcohol and drugs are, there's nothing in my life that is worth drinking. Nothing, and I've been through some serious stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there's nothing that I have been through that would have been made easier or more, any of the good stuff would not have been made more pleasurable by my drinking. I surrendered to Alcoholics Anonymous on December 7th of 1998, and that's pretty much the day that my life began. Finally, I have been sober longer than I drank. That, I think, happened like 2 years ago or something. When you start drinking young, sometimes it takes a while to catch up. So I started out as like a 13-year-old in here, and I think I'm finally 26 now, or 28. Yay. That's progress. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous and I went through the steps, and that's when I learned, integrity and accountability and taking ownership for my bad mistakes, my bad decisions, my bad behavior. Some people call it old behavior. It's not old behavior if you're still doing it. So I don't call it old behavior anymore. I call it bad behavior. And I still participate in it sometimes, just not nearly as often. I admitted I was an alcoholic long before I did anything about it. It didn't take long for me to look around and see all the unmanageability that my disease had wreaked havoc in my life. It was everywhere. The best thing that happened to me was when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I finally surrendered. And I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and I continue to work the steps. I sponsor people. I try to make myself available to newcomers. When I'm asked, I tell my story. Sometimes I sweat about it a little bit, but then I always do it. I've had a lot of interesting things happen in AA. I won't tell about all of them. Some of you have been around long enough that y'all have heard some of the really good stories. Because see, if you stay around long enough, you'll have really good AA stories that you remember. When I got here, I could tell you all the stories about some of the stuff that my family had done, because I would be the sober one in that event. But then, when I was drinking, I couldn't remember the stuff that I did, but I had really good friends that would call me and tell me, "Girl, do you know what you did last night?" "No, and I don't want to know." "No, I didn't do that." "No, you're kidding. You're lying. I didn't do that." But I did. I did some really, really tragic things, and I don't do that anymore. I've stayed sober long enough to go through some really difficult times in these rooms. And I've stayed sober long enough to go through some really awesome times, and more to come. I've had, really good jobs in recovery, and I've had really crappy jobs. I've gotten good jobs and I've lost good jobs. I've had amazing friendships and I've lost friendships. I've had a business and lost a business and started another business, and I bought a home and nearly had it foreclosed on a few years ago. I've had a car repossessed in recovery. So, stuff still happens, but I didn't drink through all of it. I've lost friends to the disease of alcoholism in the rooms. I've lost family members to the disease. It still happens. Even if I stay sober, the disease is still happening. I've known people who have committed suicide sober double-digit sobriety. I've known people that have relapsed with double-digit sobriety. The disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it's still out there. Just because we're in here tonight doesn't mean it's not out there. I've had a stalker, I've had all kinds of crazy shit in recovery, and I still didn't drink over it. I've taken some pretty amazing hiking trips and seen some really beautiful places, and we'll be doing some more, hopefully very soon. I've had the most wonderful friendships with people who would normally not mix. If you wonder who they are, just look around the room. There's a lot of people in this room that I call my friends. Even had somebody bring me a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos tonight. Now that, you have arrived. I don't eat them like I used to for obvious reasons. One of my very best friends in Alcoholics Anonymous was an 84-year-old man. Ed Davis. I loved that man. He was my soulmate. There was no age difference. When the two of us were together, we were like a couple of little kids. And I got the pleasure to be with him when he took his last breath. And I know he's still with me. I lost both of my parents in sobriety and didn't drink. I was with my mother when she took her last breath. And I only tell you guys these things because of the relevance of the fact that life still happens. There's a lot of really tragic things that happen in life, and a lot of really amazing things that happen. And no matter what, you don't have to drink over them. Because, I wasn't a real big one to drink over tragedy. I could rush into a burning building and save 15 nuns and orphans. But when I break my shoelace or have a flat tire, then I want to throw it all away. Let's get drunk. So it's not the big things that really drive me. It's the little things. And that's why I have to have a constant daily reminder that I'm an alcoholic. I'm powerless over alcohol. And once I become powerless over alcohol, I don't have to drink for my life to become unmanageable. I just have to break a shoelace. And that's it. We're off to the races. I'm a real alcoholic. I don't drink just when times are tough. I like to celebrate. Yeah. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The glamorous life. That's when I moved to Dallas, I was so excited about being in this big city and this nightlife, and it was just going to be amazing. And look where I ended up. On a Saturday night in Dallas, Texas. Man, my mother should be proud. There's been a lot of pain in the last 22 years. But you know what? There's also been some really amazing joy. Pain is inevitable. It happens. But joy is something that you have to really look for. I've just had so many different things that, like I said, I've had some really amazing hiking trips. My football team even went to the Super Bowl. Did y'all hear about that? Yeah. It was a long time ago now, but it was pretty exciting then. And that was not supposed to happen until hell froze over. And then it did in Dallas the next year. So maybe there was some truth to that. But I swore I was going to drink when the Saints won the Super Bowl. And I still didn't drink. And I was in a bar with a lot of other people drinking, and I didn't drink. So today I choose to focus on the joy in my life and not the tragedies. That's where the living is in the joy. What I have today are the blessings. I have blessings and lessons and gifts. I have a God of my understanding that I didn't have when I got here. I had your God of my misunderstanding. And it was a fear-based God, and I don't have that anymore. I got a God today that loves me in spite of all my flaws and celebrates my flaws, because I am supposed to be unique. Not terminally unique, but I am supposed to be unique, because there's none of us the same. I used to think I was unlovable, but I know today that I'm not. If I'm unlovable, it's me unloving me. Everybody else still loves me, but sometimes I don't love me. My God wants me to have good things. I've got all kinds of new adventures coming up. So, y'all look out. It's going to get serious. I've repaired relationships with my family and friends. I've even had falling out with friends in recovery and have been able to repair those. I've even repaired some of those romantic relationships that I had way back in the day that have evolved into friendships now. Today I get to be the strength and hope for others. That this thing really works. So that's the thing. Some of you got to see me when I come in. That sounded real southern, didn't it? When I come in, some of you got to see me when I came in. And you have been able to see the growth. And then some of you have come in after me. And you're like, how did that happen? I just can't imagine her being that way. And that's why I always tell you, watch the people that come in after you. Look at the people that come in after you, because you don't see the growth in yourself, but you get to see it in them. And that's where the joy is. That's where it gets real. That's a gift. Today I get to be the woman that I never thought I could be, and really never wanted to be. I didn't want to be this person. I wanted to be out there in the nightlife on Saturday night. But I would take the woman that I am today any day over one day of the best day that I had back then. Any day. I'm going to walk out the door tonight, and my car's going to be in the parking lot, I hope. And it is Dallas. And I'm going to know where my house is. I'm going to know who's there when I get there. Or they better still be there. I get to be held accountable for my mistakes today. I have friends and I have a good sponsor that do hold me accountable. Lisa. She likes to meeting shame me sometimes, when I haven't been to enough meetings. But that's what we do. And I just pick on her because she's on the front row. I've got a group of women, a gay guy and a straight guy that I play dominoes with every 2 weeks. Just, if you were to be a fly on the wall, now what happens on domino night stays at domino night. But a fly on the wall will tell you we have some really good times. There's so many things in my life to be grateful, even during these challenging times that we've had the last year and a half. We've all suffered through this, and it is so good to actually be in a meeting in person and see all of your faces. All of your faces. No matter how bad things get, no matter what happens, no matter how good things get, nothing's going to be made better by drinking. That's the gift of recovery. That's the gift of recovery. That's the gift of my recovery. I owe it all to my higher power, the God of my understanding that loves me all the time. And I owe it to Alcoholics Anonymous and the people in these rooms. Without y'all, I'm just a lost soul. Because y'all loved me until I could love myself. So, that's all I have. Thank you.